Beebe tonight. Okay. And now there is voice. There is sound. Perfect. Perfect. Yay, we made it. Fantastic. Thank you for confirming. That's good to know. Amazing. So, just my quick introduction again, in case someone missed it. So, two models for today's stream: Dr. Beebe and Calypso, and Beebe can be slotted in. That's the idea. Now, I've just painted the base because that's just not really exciting and a bit time consuming. So I thought I would just keep the really interesting stuff to the stream. I will be following the artwork. Typically, that's what I do. I just cut away the art part from the whole box. So as you can see, the colors are really muted. I will be doing some nice and easy lighting effects. And for Calypso, I have a plan to use some unusual paints. So I will be using color shift paints. Those are essentially, when you think about cars, this is the kind of metallics that you see. So something that shifts color. So this can be a mixture of purple and blue, or red and gold, red and green. I will use a few of them. I'm thinking of some kind of blue here. That's the reason I painted. I base coated it with this strong, dark base coat, because color shifts work only on black base coat. The darker, the more matte, the better the effect. So I'll start with Doctor, and I think I'll just start with the skin and some belts. So I'm just getting my paints ready. I'll start with Gallimon flesh, of course. Hello. No airbrush. I don't use airbrush really. I'm not good at it. I tried. That doesn't seem to work for me. I've been always struggling with the right consistency, so it's all brushwork. What I will be using large brushes, hopefully getting this whole thing painted tonight. We'll see. So the strange noise that you're about to hear is my vortex shaker. Yeah, a bad bot. So a vortex shaker is essentially this thingy. I don't know how far my cable can reach. Not far, but I'll just try to point my camera towards it. So there it is in the background. And what you do here is you just take a paint, put it on the top, and it starts vibrating. And it's used at beautician salons, and just good idea to remove that residue, because at the bottom typically that's when the pigment separates and the paint loses its covering properties. So the opacity gets much worse, and shaking it on that device makes it work much better. And oops, I just need to actually fill it with water. Let me just get my water. One more second. Here I am. We'll be back in a moment. Alright, sorry for that. That was a bit of bad luck. I just dropped a bottle with water. It's just a tiny container. I use my brush rinser, but this one is also good to have handy. So I'll start with Beebe. And no dry brush. I just don't use the airbrush. I gave up on using airbrush a while ago. It just doesn't seem to work for me. Seems like too much effort. Never could get the consistency right. Maybe it's the matter of humidity or my lack of skill in preparing the right consistency of paint. I don't know which, but it just never worked. So I resort to standard brushwork. Now let's start with the face. Well, That's not that much of an issue. I've painted a number of robots using color shifts before and never seemed really to be a major problem. If you do it fast with paint that is shaken up properly, then I haven't really had any issues with it. There isn't much of skin on this miniature actually. It's essentially just part of the head that's visible. He has like this welding mask, so it looks like an engineer. It's a nice miniature, a bit of a static pose, but then looks like the maintenance guy who just looks after his robot, his big robot. Probably one of the most hated models on the table because it's like the ultimate scheme runner. It's just so hard to take him down because even if you kill off Calypso, then you still have to deal with Beep, and it's hard to deal with Beep beforehand when he sits inside of Calypso. I faced Calypso twice and never really. Once I tried killing it, and then I just tried I, accepting the fact that I can't do much about it. Now time for the brown. Give it a shake. I mean, if you use Arcanists, then there are plenty of robots there. I don't have anything to show really the effects because I don't have those models here now, but I did paint a number of those. What wouldn't be better shiny and well, shiny is good. So now the belts, that way I will block those smaller areas with warmer colors, and the rest would be shades of pink grays, maybe a touch of green. I will be following roughly the artwork, although the colors are pretty dull, and I'm not saying it as that it's a negative thing. It's just that the colors are very, very muted in the official artwork. So some brown, some grays, but as you can see, it's just wouldn't look that great on a miniature, which should be more eye-catching. That's why I will go for a bit more of contrast between warm browns and cold grays, maybe blue, and maybe a slight touch of yellow, plus the kind of welding device he's holding looks like it emits some kind of flame or fire, so that will be treated with yellow. Now those are two belts and more belts here, and I think the shoulder pads I will also make them look like leather, maybe different type of leather. I will just use different brown on those. I think I mentioned in one of my streams earlier that people who design weird miniatures, they love belts because belts are everywhere, on the legs, around the waist, attached to the shoulder pads, plenty of them. Yeah, and color shifts, I have almost the whole range because at some point I was painting a lot of Arcanist robots for a person who wanted them shiny. You can find pictures in my Instagram account, like it was like 2 years ago, I believe, but they should be still there. I mean, made them look good. The painting process was probably faster thanks to the prolific use of black base coat and color shifts. Now, those are also leather elements that hold this part of armor that he has. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also for me, balls are nice focal points that allow me just to shift attention from predominantly cold color scheme and just add a few spots of warm colors that are eye-catching and just pleasant to look at. That's the idea. So I'm wondering, guys, have anyone faced Calypso on the table? And how nasty was it? Because that thing can move everywhere fast. Can't really stop it unless you have tag for ignoring armor, and you can ensure that you deal with Beebe very shortly after you have dealt with Calypso. Because if you don't, then just Beebe gets back, reassembles Calypso, and it's back to square one. I've seen so far Calypso on the table twice. Both times I was using Titania, who is all about damage, aggression, and in the first game I thought, well, let's remove Calypso, and it just didn't happen. And in my second game I just tried to keep it occupied in something else than scheming. Oh, you don't even play the game. Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, I spend much more time painting than playing. I try to get a game or two in like every week, every other week. It's a great game for sure, but I would be lying if I said that I like the game more than painting. I mean, the games are very enjoyable, very tactical, very heavy on the brain because you can really you just time flies by. I mean, the game lasts like 2 hours, 15 minutes, 2 hour 30 minutes, and you just you get into this state where you are not even aware of the passage of time. So what I do with contrast paint essentially is to define areas, then add some highlights, then add some glazes, and potentially boost the shaded areas. That's my general approach, and I'm not that worried if I, sorry for the noise, if I accidentally hit some area which shouldn't be brown at this point, because I can always go over it with Wraithbone. And clean it up. Now I think I will go for the jacket because it should be a different color. I'm thinking of using a slightly darker shade of brown here. So maybe I'll just mix something. So I'm thinking I'll just go with Wasteland Brown. Again, give it a shake. And I was originally drawn into Malifaux by amazing miniatures. That's what got my attention first. I'll be honest, I'll just mix this brown with a slight touch of green just to have this dark, rich brown color. And I was painting the miniatures without even knowing what the game is about. I only bought my first deck long after my first painted miniatures, and then I happened to enjoy the game. So it will be this greenish brown, the shade that I'm looking for. Tried some demo games. Dust instead. Okay, retired Dust. I wasn't even aware. Well, you can always give it another go. I mean, it's never a bad idea for Malifaux, which doesn't come as a surprise from a person who is a fanboy. But the reason why it's a good time now is that there is just so much new in the Malifaux, with new book coming right up, new models, new possibilities, new versions, and the release schedule is pretty much fulfilled for the previous book, I believe. So pretty much everything is available. So essentially, you get every master has an kind of alternative version which plays differently. So it's not even the experienced players haven't yet been exposed to all the new varieties. So that's why it's not a bad moment to join the hobby, just join the gaming side of things, because the experienced players don't have that much of an upper hand at this point over those who play less frequently. And while the new models have been previewed, the full keyword are still remain unknown, so we don't really know what possibilities, what tactical possibilities they will bring. So this is reach more green than brown. I can still darken it slightly. I'll do the same on the shoulder. So the same color on the shoulder. It's a bit different because the miniature is bound, sits very lightly, so I need to be careful with my brush strokes. So it's like this dark olive green, which should nicely contrast with, and I think those are still bells coming from below. Now the thing about artwork is that in the artwork, on the cover of the box, I don't see the whole miniature. I see just like the torso and part of hips, so I can just make a guess about the idea that the artist had for the whole color scheme. But at the same time, I just feel like why not improvise and not plan it holistically, just adjust as I go. And the other shoulder pad, which will again be like this hardened leather, and I will still give it a glaze over with brown afterwards. Now the backpack will be pure metallic. I don't think I'll do any color shifts on B model. I just want to do color shifts on the large model, and this one have it in more muted colors. Maybe even do some weathering on the shoes that he has. I think this is also part of the same jacket or hardened leather that he's using, because I would imagine that the backpack can be heavy, so the leather would just be this safe layer between heavy metal backpack and the body. I would say that this is also a belt because it doesn't look the same on the other side. And as always, I apply the first layer of contrast paint or express paint or speed paint, whichever it is, quite generously. Just put a large drop and move it around. Now, the nice thing about contrast paints or washes or glazes is that you can essentially apply the same thing over the surface twice or three times, and what it will do, it will just keep on darkening the area, and later on you can just use it to modify the color. So for example, if I go into deeper shadows, I'll just put another layer, whereas closer to the front, I'll just leave the one layer showing. And that naturally creates this kind of transition that would otherwise take much more time to achieve. Cheers, thank you for dropping by, and pop in if you feel like it. The stream will also be available on YouTube in its entirety or later on. And as for the card mechanics, I mean, it's just amazing. It brings you this kind of excitement every turn that you feel, because you can have some kind of plan, but until you've seen your hand, you don't know how much of that plan you can guarantee. Like you need to remove a key model, or have land a critical obey, or do something for which you require specific high suit or specific high card. You don't have that card in hand, and then the action that would normally be easy to take becomes challenging, and you need to consider what are your options for card draw, or how you can work around that, or you change the plan. And that's good. That's the enjoyable part about the game. I mean, one of the enjoyable parts, because there are plenty. Now those belts. I see at least two more belts, so I'll just give them a code of Core Grant Affair. I think that within give or take first hour, I should have most of the colors here base coated, and when as they dry, I can start thinking about Calypso. I mean, I will probably do the Calypso in the second half of the stream, because once I start using metallics, the metallic colors tend to flake, and you have flakes of, well, so particles of metallic paints just floating in your container with water. So any colors that are non-metallic can actually become slightly metallic as a result. That's why I tend to postpone using metallics to until the very final stage. And maybe one thing that I probably should have started with is that I'm streaming today, second week in a row, because Eleanor is out today. She'll be back next week, and then the following week. So we just swapped, essentially. So I took her turn this week, and she will take mine next week. So that's the brown, and now let's think about the clothes. So the uniform, I'm thinking of maybe light gray, just to add some more cold colors. But then the gloves would be in a different color. So for the gloves, I will use snakebite leather. If I can just quickly find it. And I think I can, yes. That's the color. Just give it a bit of shake. And time to paint the gloves. This color, I think I left the lid open for a few minutes too long over one of the streams, and it's become so thick that I just need to thin it down with lime and medium. So a drop of lime and medium added there. And time to mix it up. Just test it on a piece of paper. Looks good. And looks ready. So let's apply it on the gloves. It's this slightly yellowish shade of brown. So again, warmer shade here because you'll be holding some dark metallic element later on. Dark metal element, I don't know if it's some welding equipment or some kind of tool that you use to fix your robot. So I'm not too concerned about leaving some of the snakebite leather on the other elements because it will be covered with black base coat anyway. So black ink or black contrast paint. So that's the glove. And maybe I will also do this dark brown here. I mean this snakebite leather brown, because this looks like some part of this looks like it could be leather. Just something to keep things tight and protected against environmental hazards, because it's like an steampunk ATV, so all-terrain vehicle, can just move everywhere. And when you leave on the other side of breach in the world of Malifaux, I would assume that there are plenty of areas which can be really, really nasty to traverse through. Just think about Bayou. One of my favorite stories or fragments of stories is that the writer was working with Bokors and essentially training Bokors or preparing them for the Bokor role, and they were doing some potions, some nasty stuff, and instead of throwing them away at a place that would be secret and that wouldn't contaminate the fauna and flora, they were dumping it all in one site filled with old magic. And as a result, they created the Kurgan. So that's the story. It's like essentially Kurgan is this walking, angry, toxic, magical waste. I can put that aside and I can now get the gray, which is Glyph Charger Gray. A very nice color because it's slightly bluish. Let's give it a shake. And time to apply it on the trousers and part of the blouse as well. And the rest will be pretty much all metallics. So as you can see, we are 30 minutes in and the miniature is already beginning to look decent. So when we have a decent looking miniature, we can calmly move on to other segments like keeping the shadows darker or putting some highlights. I like this color because it serves as a very nice starting point, because I can then, after seeing how it interacts with other colors around it, decide whether I let it dry or I spread it around more or keep it darker once it starts drying. Yeah, sparklies will be following soon. Soon. So sparklies, I think maybe this cable will also be not metallic. I just think that it might be maybe dark green or bright green. See, I don't have a specific plan. I just kind of adjust it on the fly. And the reason I also now paint the light contrast colors is that, look, if I by accident put a drop of lighter shade on brown or this olive green, it won't really affect it because the darker color just kind of absorbs it. So it's like hobby cheating a little bit because I don't have to be so meticulous, but at the same time it just goes a long way towards helping me lay this foundation of a color. Now maybe the shoes will be dark brown, I think. Yeah, dark brown seems like a thing. So that's the contrast Psycho Brown, and that's a really foul tasting monster drink because it's not sparkling, but it's like 9 p.m. here. By the time I finish, it will be midnight. So I just need some caffeine to keep me sharp. I'm just absorbing some places where I think I might have put a drop too much, and I can get back to painting the boots. So very, very dark brown. The miniature is just attached by magnets to the base because it's meant to enter Calypso and stay buried. It's actually funny because typically in games against Explorer Society crews that hire Beebe and Calypso, you just never see Beebe on the table. He starts the game buried and Calypso just goes somewhere. And it's such a mobile thing. It's really hard to keep up with it. And then you really need to pound it to remove it from the game. Which sometimes can be just the thing that that your opponent wants. Distract you with a model and do important things elsewhere. I think I may just actually hold him like that now. And while it's drying, I can already... Now maybe I will do this cable as last part that will not be metallic on the model. As always, good idea to move the model upside down. Make sure I reach all the elements that I want to reach. And start thinking how I actually want to paint it. I'm thinking dark green, but pure green, so not the olive green, so not the brownish shade of green, not the pure green color. And the big guy is just waiting patiently for its turn. I had quite a lot of work preparing the base because it's all made of milliput. I sculpted it. So there was a lot of dry fitting to make sure that those numerous legs somehow make sense. And I try to keep it tall, so raised upwards. Because the thing about miniatures which are so huge is that it can be hard to put them base to base with other models. I had the same struggle with my Malisaurus, so I have a very tall base for it. That way I can make sure that if it touches bases of other models, it can actually stay base to base because of its tail, right? It just makes it next to impossible if you put it on a standard base. So now let's clean up with bright color. It's like an off-white. It's not pure white, but I just want to really highlight this cable before I apply green contrast on it, because that way there will be a bit more of contrast. And I'm thinking of now using maybe lizard green. The way I perceive Beebe is like he's like this mechanic. So when I think about clothes, I think more in terms of utility clothes rather than uniform that would indicate his allegiance. So that means that they do not have to be fancy. Those are functional clothes, clothes that you put on to just work. Okay, I just need to silence my laptop. There we go. And the cable will be almost ready now. Now while it dries, I can switch to another element. So the gray uniform. I mean the uniform, the gray clothes. It's not really uniform because if I now apply a second layer of the same color, so the glyph charger gray again, I'll just strengthen the color. I will still keep the contrast going, but it will be just a bit darker and a bit richer color. It's this nice shade of something between blue and gray. So you can see it's just a matter of applying the same color over the same surface, and it makes such a big impact. Looks like meticulously highlighted color, and it is highlighted. It just didn't take that much time, and I mean, it's not really cheating because I'm still painting it. It's not painting itself, but it's just one way of achieving a really decent result without huge amount of work. Well, thank you. I will still keep that yellow a bit darker, because what I will do now is I will just do the same thing I did with the gray. So once again, a drop of lemon medium and the same color, but applied maybe not on the whole surface, just trying to keep some kind of gradient And or maybe at this point one more layer, because it's still very bright and I want to keep it more brown than yellow so that it's better blended in with the overall color composition on this miniature. I will still put some highlights there, but for now I guess I will be moving to the darker shades, so maybe putting some black base coat now on the rest of the model. And for that I will move to another shade, which will be, I think, green black. So speed paint, give it a shake. And before the first hour of stream is over, I will have the miniature fully base coated and ready for more nuanced work. So adding those highlights, pushing the shades deeper where I feel like doing so. Now the armor on the second forearm. So I would imagine those are metallic plates. It's like armor that's main purpose is not protecting you against damage from battle, but rather side effects of your work. I think that one of the decent counters against Beebe Calypso combo will be Zoraida, the first version of Zoraida, who can double obey Calypso to hit Beebe and wound him severely or just kill the model. I don't know if that's doable in 2 attacks, but potentially could work. Haven't played that much. Actually, since the previous stream I played 3 games, so that was a pretty solid run. So last Thursday is the game night for my local meta. We meet at a gaming club, and I played 3 games. The first game was Zoraida against Ulix. Zoraida 1 against Ulix 1. And that game just ended quickly because I lost some key models, made some major mistakes, and I just suggested to my opponent that, I can eke out like 2-3 more points. You will probably max out. So there is no point. It's not a tournament where we have to go back and forth. We can just call it a game and start another one. So we started another one, a killie scheme, just so that we can get another game in. And I played Titania, the first Titania, against Summer, first version of Summer. I won that game. A bit luckily, because my Serena, while she didn't get her first point for Vendetta, I was able to put her back enough to protect her and secure the second point. And also with Titania, you can put quite a few really survivable strong models on the table, like the Kurgan, the Emissar, Titania herself is pretty strong in terms of needing a really concentrated effort to bring her down. So that was the key to success in that game. Just absorbing the damage, healing, having armored models, and just surviving it. And my third game that night was Zoraida 2 against Colette 2 in Carve the Path. And we didn't finish that game because that was already around 11 p.m. and I needed to get out and catch my last train. It would be a close game because we were both going pretty evenly. The highlight of the game was the first mate killing Colette. And the nice thing about Zoraida 2 is that she can she can discard the card, and other Swamp Fiend models, regardless of where they are on the table, can take a general action. So, for example, concentrate. And that way, the first mate can just go do his thing, drop scheme markers or push the Carve the Path markers, and keep that focus and jump in and deal some massive damage because he has this critical strike. He can burn a Soulstone to add a suit, and potentially he can really put in a lot. So he hit Colette for twice, once for 3 damage and once for 7 damage. That was enough. It's funny when you have your Scheme Runner hitting a Master for 7 damage. I mean, I flipped Red Joker. That was a bit lucky because without Red Joker it would be 6 damage, which is a lot anyway. So now the black is base coated, but the speed paint I'm using doesn't have that great opacity as regular black color, so I'll either add another layer of black or just put regular black paint here. But look, that's Beebe after 50 minutes of work. I think it looks reasonably good. I think that the color choices were right. And now before I start the dry brushing process, I will just push the black a little more. So for that, I will maybe use Black Templar because it is a bit thicker. I find that contrast paints have a slightly thicker consistency. Maybe it's just a matter that mine are older than the speed paints I have. Maybe I can put him back on the base. I think it's easier if I paint him separately. Now I will just put another layer of black. And those color shift paints, now these will need a really good shake because there you need the pigment to be really well mixed with the mixing medium inside the bottle, because otherwise it just doesn't cover well at all. Now there's this mouthpiece here. Again, some black here, and those don't really need to be black because those are like the flames or the melting part, whatever that is. Now the backpack, and actually I will switch to this smaller brush just for this section because the larger one makes it hard to access it and cover it properly. So this Black Templar just works very well on this light black base coat, and I will have this nice black matte color. And maybe before I actually deal with metallics, I will still work on the highlights here, paint the face, paint in the eyes. But now it's about feel like I've made color choices which I feel happy with, and now it's just a matter of following up with shades and highlights at the right places. And the thing about those pipes on the backpack, visible from the back, I will highlight them as I do all metallic parts. So with silver and then with some glazes, maybe with some slightly heavier washes. And then I can still tweak so that to differentiate between those pipes or on the back and some other metallic elements. So some of them will be silver, some of them might have a light hint of green or yellow. It really depends on how the silver part works. And very soon I'll be ready to work on the skin. I think it's now time to work on the skin. And for that I will switch to skin tones that I have handy. So I'll use new game color, rosy flesh and pale flesh. And again, giving them a bit of a shake. And we're into the first hour of the stream. And as I had planned, the miniature is ready for further work. I mean, it already looks good. It already looks really decent. I mean, if you put it on the table, even just looking like that, it would look good. But good is not the end goal here. The end goal is at least more than good. I mean, just to be pragmatic here, it's not going to be a masterpiece after 3 hours of work, but it's going to look good. So we want a really fine looking miniature. So a bit of light tone to the skin. I put some black on the face here, so that's now proper time to fix that. The Same on this side of skin, that's on this part of skin that's visible to the back. Also here. So just going around the head area with much lighter skin tone than the one I had after just the application of Gallium on flesh. Maybe one more highlight. So now it's this nice time of year. I mean, there are plenty of times that could be referenced as nice time of year for fans of word games. But the reason why this time is nice is that we are about to learn, because we will learn all the details tomorrow, what models are going to be available during the Black Friday sale. I mean, Black Friday or Cyber Sunday, Saturday, however it's called, but typically the first Friday after Thanksgiving is when the sale happens. So it's going to happen very, very soon, of course. And so the expectation is that tomorrow during the weekly Waldos section, we'll find out the details. And what happens typically on those late autumn sales at word store is that some models, some special models which were added to purchases over a certain amount of money, or some old miniatures that were sold separately, are put in stock. And what I would be definitely looking to get is the alternative Barbaros, because I don't own the model. I mean, I owned it a while ago and foolishly let it go because it now has the returned keyword. So would be nice to get it, as I will definitely be buying into the returned keyword. Well, sometimes you need to be very creative to get the right angle to reach some of the elements which are not that easily accessible. Might as well hold him like that, just to get some brighter shade on the chin here and there, and the back of the head. Now let's paint in the eyes. I will need first, before I paint the eyes, I will actually use gray color. That's Graveload Gray. Give it a bit of shake. And what I want to do is paint the eye sockets and the area around them, so that when I paint the whites for the eyes, they will sit in nicely. I can just remove it. It's kind of makes it easy to hold the miniature like that while painting. I may do the same thing for some of the other miniatures. If it makes sense, and here I just needed to paint it separately. Now the left eye will be a bit of a I don't want to say nightmare, but for sure it will be challenging to get it right because of the awkward angle that I need to use my brush at. It's really, really inconvenient. Now time for white. I'll just give it a second, give it a few seconds to dry because I don't want to apply white over black directly when it hasn't had the chance to dry. I think I'm ready. So I'll just put white on my palette. Not even trying to breathe too much, just to have better control. And now the other eye. This will be challenging, but if I make it work, I will be very happy. Almost happy. Pretty happy. Yeah, overall, looks good. Now the pupils. The pupils will be even more of a challenge. And I'm just shifting to get the best possible angle, because this will be challenging for sure. Just want to get a good tip on the brush. Okay, one eye looks good. Now let's make the other eye match, at least reasonably well. All right, made it. Don't know if you guys can see it, but the eyes look okay. I'll just sketch the eyebrows just to better frame the eyes as well. Now it's looking more like a human being. All right, getting closer to the middle of the stream, which is still good timing, because while I'm pretty sure I will be able to finish this model, that one is not a certainty. But it's not a race with time. We don't want to compromise on quality. Now let's go for maybe a light overbrush just to pick out those details. And I'm just looking for the right color to do that. Maybe this one. Bone white. So I'm going to use this thick brush from Army Painter, which I like for giving this general overbrush. I'll just remove the excess so that this barely leaves a trace. And I'll just strengthen the highlights here, because then I can really see where I want to go darker, where I want to keep things brighter. That's more like it. A bit heavier on the trousers because they are still light gray. I'll give it a good rinse because I don't want paint accumulating in that thick bristle. Let's put it aside. It will need to dry really well before I can use it next time. And now back to the detail work. So lift charger gray, maybe one more layer here. It was too heavy, but on purpose, because then I can just use brush on the miniature to kind of spread the excess of paint around. All right. Now the green, the olive green part, and for that I will choose another light color. So I'll go with black burr. Nice. And the reason I'm going with black burr, because I kind of like the contrast between raised areas and darker shades. And I don't want to get rid of this contrast completely, but I still want to make it a bit smoother in general. So that's why I'm applying now a lighter shade of green, which will still keep the dark olive look, but at the same time what it will do is it will bring the colors together nicely. And that's a cat hair over there. And I don't want this cat hair. Definitely not mine. And again, too much of paint, which is not a problem because I can just spread it to the unpainted areas which don't have any paint on them yet. Right? I think the light brown on the shoes works quite well. I'm rather happy with it. So let's take a look. If I want to change anything, I think the dark gray pants and the blouse look really good at this point. And now the belts. Let's give those belts a bit more love. So I'll use hardened leather. And again, switching to also speed paint or contrast paint, but one that is slightly brighter than the color that had been used initially, because that way, again, I will keep the same base color, only tweak it. I don't want to change it too dramatically. But again, after giving it an overbrush, there was a bit of too much of white in it, and adding now a wash of another contrast color, which is also pretty light and comparable to the first one, allows me to kind of bring it all together. Okay. It's more solid. And now a bit of warp lightning. And very soon I'll be able to start with the metallics and move on to the Calypso model. And that piece here doesn't have to be metallic, it can be green, why not? So now let's take a quick look and see if I'm ready to move on to metallic parts. Maybe one more thing, maybe I can still keep this flame element or whatever that is. I will just base coat it with brighter shade. Then it will be white, and then maybe I will paint it in a way that it matches the light coming from the inside of Calypso. And at this point I can do one more nice thing, which is some edge highlighting. So the name is pretty much self-explanatory. What I'll do is I'll just go over the edges and try to give them a very, very light highlight, which essentially is like a frame. That way various separate elements will just pop more when you look at them at first glance. I also think that I will still need to base coat some of the buttons in black before I apply the silver. So this is essentially just a very, very small thing, but trust me, it's well worth the effort because it makes the whole thing look just more more three-dimensional. It's hard to say that a three-dimensional model can be more three-dimensional, but what I mean is that it just gives the model more depth. Immediately you see that there is just more depth to the paint job. Just well worth the effort. I'll just try to bring it closer to the camera, and I'm just not painting with the tip of my brush, rather trying to paint with the side of my brush. That way it's slightly easier to control the movement and the paint application. Now I can also place the very light highlights on the fingers, especially on the knuckles, so that they are also better defined. The same on the right hand. And I can also make a bit of a highlight here, just to make it look as if there is some kind of fluid moving in that pipe or cable or whatever that is. All right, ready for more action on this one. So let's put maybe pure white now. Just a kind of indication of what will follow up here. Now back to Black Templar. And now what I want to do is to make sure that all the tiny buttons on his suit have a black base coat. And while base coating the buttons, what I try to do is to base coat both the button and the area around it, because that way it's a very slight area around it. Doesn't have to be much. Some area around it. that way, when I apply silver, it will just become better framed and better visible, which is about to happen. So I'm getting ready for the metallics now. So half time of the stream. Beebe is not done, but on its way to be called done. Although still work remains to be done, especially on the backpack. And once he's done, I can move on to this guy. See, so that's how he fits inside. And actually, now that I look at it, I may use some fluo yellow combined with maybe a very light touch of green. And kind of glaze it over this cable. Now it's a bit brighter, but also brought together nicely. And I'm ready to start with the silver. So this is my favorite silver color now, Vallejo Metallic. It just has this perfect consistency. I'm not sure if it hit the shelves already, but once it's out, make sure to get it. It's the best silver paint you can get your hands on. Now maybe I will just use a different brush here, a thinner one. Not necessarily this one, maybe this one. Just a slightly thinner brush with a good tip so that I can make sure I hit all those buttons. And that didn't work, but fortunately you can easily clean up the mess if you do it quickly enough. So you see that, oh right, I'm holding it at an awkward angle. Now it's back in the center. So what happens is that when there are black buttons with some black around the area, around the item that I'm highlighting, it just immediately becomes more striking. Now the belt as well. Also here-ish. And time for those smaller buttons on the midsection. I think I might need to remove this. All right, those are the buttons. Now time for the rest of the metallics. I can already start thinking about Calypso, about how I want to paint it. So half the stream Half the stream, lots of work done already, but plenty work fortunately remaining. So now it's time to work with metallics. And I will start with light dry brush, controlled dry brush, just trying to not to touch other clothes around the metallic bits. Then they will be given a wash of basilicanum gray, which will remove the shine and add a bit depth. And once this is done, I will move in back with some highlights. But then I won't be dry brushing those highlights, rather I will just be painting them all in. Now the backpack, this can be a bit heavier with the wash, with the dry brush, because I really want to make all the details pop here, and it's pretty nicely designed part. It's like this submarine piece of equipment which looks kind of modern, but at the same time has this old-fashioned, or you can say steampunk vibe to it. Now the color part, this one needs a slightly different approach. I need a bit of a smaller brush for that. Hey, Tablepot. Welcome. Welcome, and great to have you. And hey, hold it. Thanks for dropping by. Working on this lovely engineer guy tonight, and pretty much done on this one. Still have metallics remaining, and then I'll be moving on to the big robot, which is also magnetized to hold him in. So before I move to the big robot, I still have some finishing touches here, and couldn't agree more. It is a great game. Fully agree. Fully agree, it's a marvelous game. The card mechanics, the strategies and schemes. So what faction do you play? Tablepot. Have you committed to a faction already, or are you still in this phase where you are exploring the wonderful universe of Malifaux? And yeah, there is a bit of a learning curve. It's not a game where you can quickly feel that you are on top of things, especially that each of the masters, and there are, well, a number of them, plays completely differently. Bayou, of course. Well done. I mean, it was close to my first choice. My first choice originally was Guild, but I quickly switched to Neverborn. Haven't looked back since. I was very, very tempted a couple of weeks ago to buy into Guild again with this amazing Nightmare Lady Justice set. But I resisted the temptation, at least for now. For the time being, I'm just good with all my Neverborn. I still have a number of unpainted miniatures that will keep me busy. And there is a new master coming up soon, so switching factions or buying into another faction at this point doesn't seem like the best idea for me. Oh yeah, Bio is the wackiest of it's the wacky faction, and they have some absolutely ridiculous units and models. Fun memory was when I first, back in the second edition, the first time I faced the Pigapult, which in itself is a ridiculous name. Sorry for the noise, just giving good shake to Basilicanum Grey. And turned out that my opponent was firing pigs at me, and the pigs were undead. So that's Bio in a nutshell. Brewmaster 2, yeah, that's... I will definitely pop in to see how you paint him. There is like plenty of liquid floating around, so I would be curious to see how you paint that. Now, the reason I'm using Basilicanum Grey is that it will remove the shine from the metallics. And now that the shine is gone, I'll be able to bring it back, but only selectively. So I'll be able to just quickly place the highlights where I really want them. And that's not what I would get with standard black wash. Because yes, black wash would tone it down, but it would still keep the shine. And I want the shine gone at this point. The liquid looks on him shoujo are going to be a challenge. Yeah, yeah. Of course it has to be like what? Orangish, yellowish? Just to stay true to the theme of the Liquor Master. The same on the buttons as well. A light touch up of silver. So now you see it's muted down the shine on the metallics in a way that I was hoping for. Now the same needs to happen on other elements. Now this looks like old metal now. Proper old metal. Eugene colors. I mean, it's the thing is to first base coat it black, then put some mid silver, so not the brightest shade of silver, and then you can just put the same color that you put as a base coat for silver for highlights, and then use something like this super bright silver, which is almost white, for some fine touches. Now I'll use the mid silver, so the one that I used before applying gray wash. Water it down slightly. It's a bit challenging to work with thin down metallics because the particles of silver tend to flake off and it's easy to lose control of it. So mix it well. I actually just mix it with water. Yeah, those are super bright silvers and I may use them on the buttons? Not necessarily, and now I'm just carefully going around the areas which are raised, thinking about, well, in a way, framing it again. There is like a hidden element inside of here that I want to be more noticeable. Just looking for any raised elements and just very, very lightly adding highlights there. And following that, I will still apply one more glaze of light blue. I just found that this gives the metal a very nice finish. So bear with me. It will just be a few minutes before the silver is highlighted. And then it's just a matter of one quick glaze. Some more buttons here. So what happened is that metal, that gray wash took away all the shine. Now I'm bringing it back, but selectively. I mean, I could have just gone with dry brush now, which would have made it brighter, but now I'm just feel like I'm more in control of the process. And I like having more control. And this one is actually a model I'm painting for a body, and we will likely play a game this coming Thursday, though I'm not sure if he will bring this miniature to the table, because he wanted to try playing Nexus. We have a tournament in Poland coming up, and now I'm just dabbing it to make it look like slightly beaten metal, slightly worn metal that has seen better days. So we have a tournament coming up in 2 weeks' time in Kraków, which is this historical city in the south of Poland. Actually, my birthplace, which is about 300 kilometers from where I live. So I'll probably take I will travel there by train. Will be fun to play 3 tournament games. Haven't played in a tournament for a couple of months. Although the meta in the area where I live seems to be doing pretty well. We have some even new people who joined recently and play every week. Now the backpack. The backpack will be a bit more time consuming, because I want all the, or maybe I will do the buttons and this element on his hip. Just give it a slightly metallic feel by just very, very light touch of silver. And now the backpack. So as expected, the Calypso I will start during the final hour. I may be unable to finish the whole model. That's very likely to happen. But I will see how far I can go. So just lightly tapping. Just making sure I reach all the elements. And also those cables here, I will just give them a quick highlight just to make sure that only the raised areas are touched up with silver. And then I will decide if I want them green or maybe blue or maybe yellow, just to have some differentiation between the shades of metallics on the back. And I think I will keep those plated areas brighter than the ones in the back. I may actually just keep them as they are now. I'll need to have a look at it in a second. Okay, so that's where we are now. I think it's a pretty good look. I may actually have some very light highlights towards the top here. So in general, I like this contrast between dark metallics and bright metallics. So I don't want to have the same shade of silver on those, I'm not sure what they are, like gas tanks or fuel containers. Either way, I want them just slightly darker. Right. Now time for applying light blue. And for light blue, I will do the aromatic blue. Just need to give it a good shake. I think that he has now the color scheme that the blue makes him look like a proper explorer, right? Proper member of Explorer Society. So I will use this aromatic blue on two elements. First of all, the clothes, just maybe not on all of it, just towards the upper side of it and towards the elbows, maybe a touch here, just to keep those slightly brighter. Adding a little, introducing just a little bit of variety. It's just playing with the saturation of the color. And now what I'll do is just, I will thin it down slightly with water, not with mixing medium. And that will, it will be, I mixed it with dirty water, which contains at this point some flakes of metallic paint. And I will just glaze it over all the metallic elements, just to, again, bring it all together nicely. And it shouldn't become blue, it should become bluish. That's the idea of glaze. It's like a filter. So think about filter where you can control how dramatic you want the change to be, and we don't want a dramatic change. It's what I'm aiming for is here, it's a slight shift towards bluish color. I actually like the look of those cables bright, so I'll just give them a light glaze of blue. I want them to remain bright against this darker metal. Maybe a small touch of a bit more of aromatic blue here and here. And that way it looks like the shade of metallics on the armor kind of matches the clothes. And Explorer color function is this nice shade of blue, so it kind of resonates with that. At least that's my thinking here. That's the intention. The same on the buttons. Actually, the buttons can remain silver like that. And for this flame part or whatever that is, I will just add a hint of yellow or fluor yellow, just to indicate that that's the color that I will be working with. Maybe I will just highlight it so it looks like a proper flame, so that it becomes gradually, I move from white in the recessed areas to orange and red. So that's, well, almost 2 hours in, and the first model for today is pretty much done. I can actually mount him now on the 30mm base. There will be some static grass so that he just fits in better. So that's Beebe. Maybe one more spot where I can slightly tweak it with blue, part of the mask. I'm really happy with the eyes. I mean, happy that I was actually even able to paint them. But that's Dr. Beebe. Almost ready. Actually, you know what? Let's just give those super bright silver. I'll just use it very selectively on some of the raised areas. Just very lightly in a controlled way. It's like white mixed with silver essentially. So I'll just touch the edge here just to give it a little bit more of definition. And again, it's like edge highlighting essentially, but with silver. But it's super bright. So we'll just make the details pop even more. Also here, just, you know, a little bit of this edge highlighting really goes a long way. And maybe on the helmet here. I'm not sure if helmet is the proper name. It's a proper name, but definitely it's something that's meant to. There's a visor here, so I'll just, by placing highlights around it, just define it better, because it's right now it's just barely visible. So that's Beebe done, looking like a proper explorer. And now for Calypso, thinking of using color shift paints, and I have a couple of them handy, and I think I will use one of these three. So Storm Surge Green, Celestial Azure, or Cobalt Blue. Now, in order to be sure how they look, I just need to prepare. I'll just grab a 30mm base, put some black on it. Actually, it's a good one because it's flat. And I'll just put some black, paint the base, give those paints a very good shake, because they need the pigment to be really mixed well. So what I'll do now is I'll just prepare the surface of the base, and then I'll be able to make up my mind which color I actually want. Because I want kind of bright blue. Thinking bright blue because it's the color of the faction. And then blue works really well with silver. So what I'll do is probably the main plates will be this blue of choice, and the cables will be silver with a hint of green to them maybe. And then I will do some fine detailing and just make sure that all those recessed areas are nicely defined. But I have a nice trick for that. And that's it. I know it's a huge model, and I know we have just 1 hour left, but let's see how far I can take it. So for now, I'll just leave this guy in the middle of the screen and give these 3 paints a very good shake. Really good shake. Maybe a little bit more. I just want to make sure that they are really thoroughly mixed before I apply them. Okay, that's it for the noisy part. Let's see. Maybe to give them a bit of shake. I want to make sure that they are really, really well prepared. Fortunately, they have a nice metal element inside of them. kind of music, right? Or noise. I think I can try. So I'll just put each of them separately. Let's start with Storm Surge Green. Yeah, it looks like it's mixed up pretty nicely, although the black hasn't dried fully, but it will be completely dry in a moment. So that's the Storm Surge Green. Next one up is Celestial Azure, which should be more bluish. And then we have Cobalt Blue, which should be probably a bit darker. We'll find out soon enough. Now what happens is I'm going to apply them on this test base, and I'll start with the mid one, so the Celestial Azure, and I'll just draw a line in the center just to see how it looks on black base coat. So that's Celestial Azure, and that was my favorite from the beginning. We'll see how it looks compared to other colors. Then I will put Storm Surge Green, which I also think is quite an interesting color. And yes, it is somewhat greenish. And the Cobalt Blue. And that's a deep, rich shade of blue. So we have the three colors, which look super shiny now. And I've yet to make up my mind which one will look best on Calypso, and I'm leaning towards the middle one. That was my original idea. So I think I'll go with it. That means that this one gets to be shaken a bit more. So apologies in advance, prepare for a bit more noise. Really making sure I shake it well. Because a lot depends on it. If I don't shake it well enough, the effect will just not be good. So I'll now use a slightly larger brush. So this one should be fine, I believe. And I'll start applying it on the Calypso model. All right, it looks good on the palette. Well, let's see how it looks on the Calypso. I will start with those larger metallic plates, and I'm not worried about the paint getting into the recessed areas at this point, because I will use a special medium that I will just something that works like a glaze, so that will just define the recessed areas. Now it would be easier, yes, I acknowledge it. It would be easier if I had an airbrush, but well, I do have an airbrush, but I think I used some cobweb effect on it. It clogged him to the point that it's no longer usable, and now I need to resort to brushwork. But I've never really been good with airbrush, although I acknowledge it's an extremely versatile tool in the hands of people who know how to use it well. But that means that for the metallics to really work, I will need 2 layers. So I'll wait for it to dry. I mean, I won't wait. I'll just work on other parts of the model and then get back to it when it's fully dry and apply a second layer. That's the plan. And this is just a huge model, so I will need to hold it at some whoopsie, something happened to the quality. Let's hope we can get it back. Hello back. Hello again. Just, Waldo, please stay out of this. It's a robot. Nothing you can break. I mean, even Waldo wouldn't be able to break Calypso. That's how much of a challenge that is. I'll just try to keep my camera maybe a bit higher because it's a large miniature and I want to keep it at an angle that's visible. Yeah, we are back. Thank you for those who stuck by. So what I'm doing now is just putting the first layer of color shift, and it's not really dry brushing. I'm just using a thick brush to make sure that the application process goes fast. It would be neat to have skills and tools. So you use the airbrush here, but as you can see, it just goes really smoothly on black base coat and makes immediate impact. Just look at how glorious it looks. It's got this lovely shine to it. And the nice thing is that it covers really well. I mean, the opacity is just amazing. And I can still strengthen this silver blue metallic color with a second layer, which I will do, but I just for now want to cover all the armor sections with this lovely shade of bright blue. And trust me, it's just not the easiest thing in the world because this miniature, once it's assembled, it's just a big boy. And you need to really, really move it around. To try to access all the parts. So just one thin layer for now, which will be followed up by second thin layer. And he has 8 legs and 2 arms. So I can imagine how, well, I mean, I cannot imagine how funny. It looks like a crab, probably, when it walks. Could be, could be fun because generally when you think of those large vehicles, don't think about Transformers movies. Those have nothing to do with realism. Just think about construction crane. It's a huge machine and it works. It moves super slow because that's how physics work. I mean, the larger the object, the harder it is to get it moving fast. And I'm not talking about planes, but rather vehicles moving on the ground. Right, so the left side is almost ready. But now when I think about those numerous limbs, maybe it could make it move reasonably fast. Not sure about it, but that's a possibility. But you see now, let me put Beebe next to it. I painted Beebe using those muted standard colors, and he looks completely different inside of it. So I'm really happy with how these color shift metallics are affecting the black base coat, and it's critical when you want to use color shift metallics to use really dark matte base coat, because otherwise if I paint it on white, it just doesn't leave a trace. If I paint it on this dark spot here, it immediately, I mean, probably you cannot see it because it's quite far away, but if I paint it on black surface, it looks glorious. It looks like just essentially like a car, like metallic on the car that you see in broad daylight. So super shiny, glossy. I will take away the shine with matte varnish in the final stage, but I can maybe I will maybe I will not. Maybe I'll leave this one gloss. I'll I'll see. Haven't made up my mind yet. Just depends on how the bulk of the model looks like when it's base coated with this blue bright color. Now guys, I'm really sorry for holding it at an angle which is not optimal, but trust me, I'm really doing my best here to paint it and make sure you can follow at least most of the process, because it is indeed a huge model. Size 4 in game, I believe. Low stats, but enough of defense tag to keep it on the table for longer. And we have 40 minutes to go, so plenty of time left, really. At least I will give it 2 coats of this lovely color shift blue. I think I've covered most of it. Let me just rotate it steadily so that I make sure I don't miss out on any important spots. There will be still some static grass added to the base because it looks kind of empty. Let's see if I hold it like that. Does it make it easier? No, another layer. So it's like instead of using the airbrush, I'll just wait it for the front part to dry. And now I'm just applying another layer of paint here, which will give it a little bit of boost. It won't change its appearance dramatically. It will just give a bit of boost to the blue metallic. Then I will work on the areas where those plates connect, make sure that there is distinctly visible darker line in the recessed area. And afterwards, I'll just use pure silver, so bright silver for those edge highlights here. But for now, it's all about, now that I've given it a base coat, it's like giving it a broad highlight. Turn it upside down and work around. And the areas which are deeper can remain with just the base coat, so there will still be this glowy blue metallic, but less, well, not as bright as the one at the front. And the brush strokes, I earlier on the comment section in the chat, someone mentioned that they were concerned that brush strokes may show while applying this kind of metallic paints. As well, as you can see, it's not really that impactful. Can't really tell that there were brush strokes here. And I'm really going heavy on this one. Not pulling any punches, just full-fledged paint attack on this one. It's a really fun experience to work with those color shift paints because you get such an impact with such little effort. I mean, of course, it's easy to say now when the miniature is assembled because assembling this miniature was an effort in itself. It's like a 3D puzzle, and I also made it harder for me because I decided to cut out the hatch so that Beep can fit in. I think it's in the end it will be well worth the effort. Again, I do not feel like I need to really go heavy on the highlights in the areas towards the center of the miniature because I'm quite happy with how bright the elements outside are and the elements inside, the parts inside are still the same color, only less intense. So this is in fact the effect that looks like really meticulous advanced highlighting, whereas all I do is just slap more paint on with one of my thickest brushes, mainly because it's such a large miniature, so I can really go heavy here. And it looks so good when light reflects, like this chrome metal. I wouldn't get nearly half as cool effect if I just worked with silver. Probably I'd get a better effect if I worked with airbrush, but you can't have everything, can you? Okay, half an hour left in the stream. So looks at this point like I may be unable to finish. Well, most likely, let's just face it, I will probably not finish the whole model, but I will at least make some considerable progress. And tomorrow in the late afternoon or evening, I will probably add some final touches to it, spend an hour or two more, and by late nighttime, I should have pictures of the finished model on my Instagram. Now, as for, I typically make shoutouts, but to be honest, I've been recently listening more to audiobooks than podcasts. I have some catching up to do in terms of listening to Malifaux podcast, but maybe not a shout out, but generally, guys, be aware that the Rotten Harvest sale, the autumn sale, is coming right up. So next week, you can expect some limited models to appear. This is typically this time of year where those of you who wanted to buy stuff at Gen Con after weren't able to do that or didn't have time or just missed the opportunity. So it's a good chance to make up for it. So be on the watch out. Just follow Word's social media and you'll get all the all the major updates there. Now I'm trying to apply the paint really heavy just to actually thinking that even some texture showing here is a good idea. So yes, maybe brush strokes will be visible, but for a good reason. I want them to be visible. I want this to look like, yes, fancy, advanced, technologically vehicle, at least for the time of the setting of the Malifaux universe. But at the same time, I want it to look like it is not brand new. It's one of the largest word miniatures. I think that dinosaur, that Malisaurus could be comparable in size, and I don't mean the size for in game, but generally just size of the model. So maybe may feel like I'm doing some hobby cheating, but I haven't painted with color shift metallics on any of my previous streams. So thought that this would be a great opportunity to actually do that. All right, I think that for the blue part, clicky clicky. Yes, this is the color shift. This is the Celestial Azure painted over black base coat. Makes it look super glossy. Especially when compared to standard metallics on Beebe next to it. Well, thank you. Thank you, and nice of you to drop by again. Now I will switch to... Now I just need to make sure that I rinse the brush properly, because this, if I don't clean the brush well, this paint will make any other next colors applied with this brush different, and I don't want it to happen. Oops. So now I'll go with standard metallics, because my thinking is now that those pipes here or those cables, they will be painted with standard silver metallics, but given some, I will be giving it some brownish wash, because brown will nicely contrast with blue. So you can see, just having a look at the color scale, we have blue, and opposite to blue, so the kind of blue that we have is this one, more or less. Then we have orange. So orange might be a good complementary color to the blue armor, which will add more depth, and it will be just more, I mean, eye-catching. So that's... I was intuitively thinking about warm color and something different, but looking at the color wheel sometimes is a... Well, it's a good idea to just have it as a point of reference. So now I'll be doing a layer of silver over those elements which are not blue. Maybe this one as well. Yeah, this one too. Will be a bit challenging to go below, but let's see how much I can get there. It's not like in game this miniature will be looked at upside down, so I'm not that concerned about it. All right, so the silver is right now nicely complementing the blue. And I'm aware that the blur in the camera is there, but guys, really can't really make it work otherwise. It just needs a lot of movement and looking at it from different angle. I'm thinking that if anyone ever paints this in non-metallic metal, then I salute you, because it would just take ages. Time to add a bit more of silver. And you know, tomorrow there is another stream. Tomorrow, Haunted, another fellow word painter, will be painting Brewmaster. So grab a drink. I mean, like tea or coffee, of course. Follow along. I mean, take your Brewmaster or take your miniatures and get involved. I will definitely pop in because I'm really interested in what Haunted does to this lovely miniature. See, now this is assembling. This was fun. It felt like a clever 3D puzzle. I mean, the pieces fit in very well. It was just a matter of making sure I glue them in the right order, because I would have really made my life complicated if I approached it in the wrong order. Okay, so silver hitting in. Well, silver is almost everywhere where I want it to be, and I will be glazing it, or well, maybe not glazing, but giving it a wash. But which now at this point, where if there are more sections which are really tough to get, and there's barely any trace of silver on them, I'm okay with that, because these won't be that clearly visible anyway. So what I'll do now is, I think I will just give it a good glaze of a mix of black and brown. So here's what's going to happen. I'll just turn this other side base upside down, and I think I will go with Crusader skin, because this is the slightly orangish skin tone. Plenty of it, really plenty of it. And I will mix it with Nalm oil. This one. And that should give me a proper wash. So dark brown, or maybe even slightly orangish dark. Yeah, that's, I think, pretty good. Maybe even slightly touch of Zealot yellow to that, just to keep it even brighter than what I just put on the paper. All right, that feels more brown than black. And now I'll just go over all those silver parts and apply it. And it makes immediate impact because black, darkens it, and mixture of skin tone with yellow just adds this contrastive element of a touch of warmth. When it dries, I can still tweak it with some different color. So now I'll be slightly more careful just to make sure. Slightly more careful, and almost dropped it. Fortunately, disaster averted. I'll just hold it in hand like that. And what I'll do is I'll just go around the miniature and apply it everywhere. So, moving into final 20 minutes of the stream, I will soon be beginning to wrap things up. But I just want to at least get this to the kind of color I want, which will be a bit more brown than this, and then maybe one more silver dry brush just to bring back the shine to those elements. And then I will darken the recessed areas and apply one more highlight or two more highlights. So there we are. Whoops, here we are. It is definitely darker. And the front part here, which sadly I won't be able to most likely do in the stream, is I want to have it, I want this to have the effect as if it was glowing. So the way I will achieve it, I will first of all paint white beneath, inside of those crates here. I mean, inside of those, well, what is it, like a structure here, this cage-like element. So inside I will paint white, then dry brush around it with white, and then I apply fluo yellow, because that way it's a nice and easy effect of making this look as if it was glowing. I'll just spread the paint, make sure that it's even. I think I will go a bit more towards the orange range now, and I will just use Cliff Orange, or no, I will just use Fire Giant Orange. So a bit of crazy camera work, I'm sorry, but makes me look sloppy, but I just want to I just want to paint this miniature, and it's really becoming increasingly hard to maneuver with it. So what I'll do now is I'll just apply a touch of orange to some of the sections here, and then wait for it to dry. And I'm already at this point thinking about what to paint next, because my next stream will come on December 6th, so plenty of time until then. I have some Guild, I have some Neverborn. Maybe I will have something new, maybe not. Maybe I'll paint something from my own collection. Guess we'll find out in a bit less than a month, which is soon enough to say I'm really looking forward to the winter break. I feel like my batteries are still charged, but not supercharged, and some downtime would do them a world of good. So what I'm doing now is I'm just gently adding a hint of orange, but really pushing that orange into the deep recessed areas, just to create more of significant effect there. It's like with big miniatures, you need to make big moves. Otherwise it would look flat, right? It wouldn't be much of a difference. And I want a difference clearly noticeable between the areas which are raised and those which are recessed or bent and kind of naturally darker. But this is looking pretty cool, I think. I'm not painting the inside. Doesn't make sense. Won't be. It can just stay black. There's just a magnet for Beebe to be attached to. Let me add a bit more of now even darker orange. So I'll use Glyphhound orange. Well, thank you. I appreciate the wow. Glad you like the effect. It looks super nice when it's ready, I think. Like something otherworldly. And granted, well, Malifaux is an otherworldly place in itself, but all the constructs there, they kind of look a bit organic. There's this Polish fantasy writer, Stanisław Lem. You might have, I think the Solaris movies was based on one of his books. And he has there is this very peculiar style of illustrations in his books, and they kind of remind me of Malifaux constructs. But essentially, guys, look at this. I think would look great on any table already, even without those fine-tuned details. And this was done in less than an hour. So if I can do it quickly over a stream in less than an hour, then I think anyone can do it, really, because I haven't used any advanced technique. Really, no airbrush, no meticulous highlighting, just big, bold brush strokes. And that's it. Nothing really fancy to it. Nothing. I wouldn't call it the most subtle job, the most subtle paint job I've ever done, but definitely effective. And yeah, and this orangish shade really brings a lot of nice dynamic contrast here. Right, I have to rinse the brush. Couple more minutes to go. Let's see how Beebe now looks like. Let's dry fit Beebe. inside of the robots, of the vehicle. Because I keep on referring to it as robot, but it's not really a robot. So that's Calypso in its metal polished glory. And that's Beebe coming in. I think, yeah, makes sense. Looks like proper pilot. And of course, Beebe can be just mounted separately if someone would run him this way. I mean, if Calypso gets destroyed, I think that's the only time he gets ejected, because otherwise, no, take him out. I'll just add a bit of shade to the face because it looks too pale, even for a scientist who sits inside of a robot-like creature device. I think it needs a bit of darker tone. That's it. That's more like it. Just thin down Raycon flash glaze. Okie dokie. So either this way, or he can face this way, or he can face this way. However you want to put him. I don't think he will see much of the table anyway, because most of the time he will be staying in the safety of Calypso. Now I'm thinking, is it the time to do the final highlight? Maybe I'll just push a little bit more orange in. Because after that, the next steps would be, still not ready for one more application. The next steps here would be to give some edge highlight with really bright silver so that those edges really stand out. The recessed part will remain dark. And my hobby cheating thing that I will be using. So my hobby trick is something that I've shown before. Let me show it to you guys again. It's like this pre-made oil wash, which is called panel line accent color. So let me show you how it works. While it's drying, let's see, for example, this section where the plates connect. I just very lightly, all I do is touch and let it flow in. And check out, the magic happens. You see it flows in so nicely. It's like effortless. Yes, I am cheating now. It is hobby cheating, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. But it makes a difference. Like, let me compare this side, where the thin line between the plates was added, and compare it to this side, where there is a trace of blue. So yeah, definitely I'm going to do it in all the recessed areas around all those things here. It's just such an easy way of producing additional depth on a model. So if you want to have an easy way to do that, just get yourself a panel line accent color. It's essentially what it is what are the ingredients? It's mineral, spirit, pigments, and some difficult names. So what happens is that it's just very nicely affects the recessed areas and creates immediate dark contrast. Okay, so now maybe a little bit more of work with orange, and then we can wrap it up. Then it's just a matter of highlighting and a bit of work in the recessed areas, and it's done. Huge model that looks like a major challenge, and yes, it is a challenge to paint, but at the same time you can use certain ways to make the whole process a bit easier. And I'm sure it will look great on the table. It already looks pretty good. So now I'm just spreading the paint around in the areas where I feel it accumulated too much, or just adding it where I don't see enough of it. Yeah, being mindful of time, we're on track to finish very soon. It's been a fun stream for me. Hope anyone watching feels the same at least, or that you gained some insight, maybe learned something new. I've said it many times before, my main purpose is just sharing tips and tricks I've learned, because well, I I would assume that anyone who joins this stream has general good or very good idea of what they paint, how they paint, and just are here for some extra tips or tricks. So I hope that I provide some. But that being said, anything I show is most likely something that I learned somewhere else. So this is a mutual thing that I just try to reciprocate and show you guys things that I learned somewhere else, most likely online. All right. Maybe slight touch up here. And maybe a bit of this orangish around the hatch, just to kind of give an indication that it's a different thing inside of there. Right, so wrapping up very soon. I will definitely be putting pictures of the finished model on my Instagram. That is it. That's my blog, and if you just look up what defo with dots between what the and for, then you will find my Instagram profile. And just wrapping things up. So this is the model I started the stream with. So Dr. Beebe, and I'm just getting ink all over my fingers now. So that's Dr. Beebe. Yeah, that's my Instagram link. Thank you for sharing it. Like and subscribe. You can see plenty of Malifaux. Mainly 90% of my content there, or 95% of my content is Malifaux. Those are by far my favorite miniatures to work with. So that's this Beebe. I will still get some work on this flame, but other than that, this model is good to go. There will be some static grass tufts added to the base. And this is the Calypso. Large model, and Beebe can fit in because it's magnetized to either be on the base or in here. And check in tomorrow. Tomorrow, Haunted will be painting Brewmaster 2. So really nice miniature. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and hope to see some familiar faces and maybe new people as well there. Until then, keep it weird, keep it fun, and see you next time. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.